Hello, thank you for joining me for Books and Landscape, and my name is Amanda Davey. Today I'm doing saints, and I'm sat in the garden because it's too hot to sit inside and be on screen, so I'm recording the audio and then I'm going to put some pictures of churches in. I started to do a video on the industries that used to be a feature in the South Downs, but this is a huge topic that needs more kneading, to use a bread dough analogy. I've got pages and pages and pages of notes for it, and that would just make a 2-hour, rather boring video of a list of sites and the things going on with them, so haha. Alright, so instead I'm touching on the saints to whom the South Downs churches, chapels, and also their own places of worship have been dedicated. At the end of my book, I've given some brief notes about them, but of course the saint can mean different things to different people, so what I say may chime or may not. Until Henry VIII, Thomas Cromwell, and the Reformation, there was really only the one church in England with the Pope at its head. Dissent had started to dig in, but it took the break with Rome to change how churches were dedicated. Modern churches have a different focus, although it is likely that many dedications stem from the day the bishop was free to consecrate it. In any case, some of the odd designations have actually been backdated, new ones brought in. The most frequent dedication is to St. Mary, Mother of Jesus. She gets 49 in her alternatives as the Virgin and Our Lady, as well as St. Mary. St. Mary Magdalene has 6, and linking back to the industries in the world, it's interesting that one of her patronages is to tanners. There are other patrons of tanners as well. St. Michael has 10. My comment about him was that he was a sort of biblical Batman character, given the range of his patronages, including grocers and paratroopers. St. Nicholas has 11, patron of children in the west and sailors in the east. Unsurprisingly, St. Peter is the second most popular to St. Mary at 23, given his part in the founding of the church in Rome. Interestingly, St. Paul only notches up 3. I think St. John the Baptist gets 7. St. Andrew has 14, St. Peter's brother, who is also patron saint of Scotland. St. George, in spite of his English patronage, only has 1 dedication in the national park. St. James, patron of pilgrimages, has 6 dedications. The variants on the Holy Trinity include All Saints, All Hallows, Christ Church, the Good Shepherd, and Sacred Heart, in total 24. Single dedications cover 22 places, and some of these saints are fascinating. So, and here's a list. So I don't know any other way to do it. So, look at the photos for what the churches are. St. Agatha, patron. She was AD 231 to 251, so she was only 20. Patron of bell founders, breast cancer patients, bakers, nurses, jewellers, martyrs, rape victims, sufferers of sterility, victims, volcanic eruptions. From Sicily, she was tortured when she refused the advances of a Roman prefect who wanted to marry her. She was sentenced to burn at the stake, but an earthquake prevented it. She died in prison. St. Agnes, 291 to 304, patron of young girls, chastity, rape survivors, and the children of Mary. She was born in Rome to a Christian family. Beautiful and sought after, she wanted to remain pure, and her frustrated suitors reported her for her faith, and she was beheaded. St. Anthony of Padua, patron of lost things. My mother-in-law used to regularly ask St. Anthony for guidance when she lost things. Portuguese Franciscan friend of St. Francis. Fine orator who famously preached to a shoal of fish when the locals rejected him. St. Anne, at 50 BC to 12 AD, so maternal grandmother of Jesus, but not named in the 4 Gospels. patron of unmarried mothers, carpenters, childcare, childless people, children, equestrians, grandparents, lace makers, lost items, mothers, poverty, pregnancy, sterility, and teachers. St. Barnabas, patron saint of Cyprus, against hailstorms and invoked as peacemaker.
Early Christian convert and financial supporter of the early church. Originally called Joseph, the apostles named him Barnabas. Introduced Paul to the community at Antioch and travelled widely with him and his own cousin John Mark. St. Blaise died in 1316, patron of animals, builders, drapers, vets, throats, stone cutters, woodworkers, Bishop of Sebastian and healer, martyred. St. Catherine of Alexandria, 287 to 305, tortured on a wheel, determined to remain devout and a virgin. She is the patron saint of many, including young girls, students, philosophers and craftsmen working with wheels, and is venerated by the Eastern Orthodox Church as well. Her monastery in Mount Sinai is one of the oldest in the world. There were two St. Catherine, so the date is crucial. For St. Catherine's Hill Chapel, it was active before St. Catherine of Siena was born, and also high spots were important. St. Catherine of Siena, 1347 to 80, patron against fire, illness, 25th child born to her poor mother, one of those who brought the popes back to Rome from Avignon. St. Cosmas and St. Damien, two Arab twin doctors martyred for their faith, patrons of surgeons, physicians, twins, dentists, barbers, pharmacists, vets, orphanages against the plague, not a common church dedication. St. Denis, patron saint of France, Paris, against frenzy, strife, headaches, hydrophobia, possessed people, Bishop of Paris, martyred, one of the 14 holy helpers brought forward from the Pope's response to the Black Death, namely Acacius, Barbara, Blaise, Catherine of Alexandria, Christopher, Syriacus, Denis, Erasmus of Formia, Eustace, George, Giles, Margaret of Antioch, Pantaleon, Vitus of St. Vitus Dance, St. Dunstan, 909 to 988, Archbishop of Canterbury and once popular saint, patron of blacksmiths, goldsmiths, locksmiths, musicians, silversmiths and bell ringers. St. Francis of Assisi actually doesn't crop up as a church dedication, but the Franciscans were lurking around. Patron of animals, merchants, ecology, stowaways. Born in Assisi, 1181 to 1226, named after France, with which his father was obsessed. As a youth, he lived a carefree life as the son of a rich man. But following a vision in a small run-down church, he began to build his own mission that became the Franciscan order, revering nature and deploring wealth and possessions. He travelled to meet the Sultan, Saladin's brother, in the Fifth Crusade and survived the encounter. St. George, only one, he died in 303. He has had a complex set of associations and therefore patronages. There was a cult of St. George in England before 1066. St. Edmund had been the previous English patron saint, but Edward the Confessor dedicated Windsor Castle Chapel to St. George. Patron of agricultural workers, farmers, field workers, soldiers, archers, armories, equestrian, cavalry, saddle makers, chivalry, peacekeeping missions, skin diseases, lepers and leprosy, syphilis, sheep, shepherds, scouting, and England, thought to have come from Cappadocia, martyred in pre-Constantine persecution army and Diocletian's time. Hard to believe he's not got more dedications in the South Downs. St. Hubert, first Bishop of Liège, patron saint of hunters, mathematicians, opticians and metalworkers, and often called upon to help with rabies. His dedication in Idsworth is based on a misunderstanding of the paintings, but anyway, that's another matter. So, now it is St. Margaret of Scotland, 1045 to 93, Saxon princess born to Edward the Exile in Hungary, fled after the Battle of Hastings, shipwrecked on the Scottish coast, and then married Malcolm Canmore III in 1070. They had 8 children. She was kind and devout and founded the Abbey at Dunfermline as well as other churches. She is the queen for whom Queen's Ferry is named. St. Martin of Tours, 1130 to 1203, the dedication to the patron saint of beggars, wool weavers and tailors, vintners and innkeepers implies travellers. Son of a Roman army officer, he served under Constantine before becoming a roving priest. His emblem is often a goose, since the annual migration coincides with his feast day. St. Matthew, patron of bankers, accountants, bookkeepers, security guards, stockbrokers and tax collectors. He was the first to follow Jesus and the first gospel author in the New Testament. St. Philip Howard, 13th Earl, 1557 to 1595, canonised in 1970. Arundel Cathedral was originally the church of St. Philip Nero, 1869 plus. Made a cathedral in 1965, and the denomination changed in 1970 when Howard's tomb was moved. Deemed a Catholic martyr under Elizabeth I, he wrote worthy treatises while in the Tower. St. Swithin, 800 to 63, patron of Hampshire, Bishop of Winchester, and built several churches. St. Thomas of Becket, about 1119 to 70, famously killed by Henry II's knights in Canterbury Cathedral, made a saint 2 years later. He had resisted the king's pressure to do his bidding. This triggered dedicated pilgrims following the king's penitent journey, still remembered by various pilgrims' ways to this day. St. Wilfrid of Sens, 640 to 703. Only 2 English churches have this dedication, the other is in Grantham. He protects against the dangers of the sea. The Transfiguration, modern dedication at Pycombe to the Transfiguration of Jesus. There are also about 15 churches that have no known dedication. Many of these are the older churches. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me and this little romp through the saints, and wishing you all the very best and keeping cool. Thank you.